Hello, and welcome back to Random Vids. Today, I'm continuing with the 101 Dalmatians series rankings. So I already did Season 1. If you haven't seen it, check it out. And, that was the #1 most viewed ranking video that I ever did. So, I decided to do it again, but this time I'm doing Season 2. And yeah, Season 2 is very, very long. Am I doing the whole Season 1 video? No. I'm going to be splitting it up in parts. So, this is part 1. I think it's 16 episodes. So, 16 episodes in this part, and then eventually, we'll get through all the parts and we'll finish. I don't think I ranked all episodes. I think there's like 2 that are missing or something like that. If they're missing, and if you know what they're called, you can leave them down in the comments if you want to. So anyway, without further ado, let's get ranking. So number 16, and my personal least favorite episode of part 1 of season 2 would have to go to Tic Track Toe. So in this episode, this very forgettable dog, Go-Go, is afraid of bunnies. Yeah, hear me right, bunnies. Because he is, well, so afraid of bunnies, he doesn't even want to, win a race. This episode actually isn't too bad. It's actually just more boring than bad. Like in last season's Love 'Em and Flee 'Em, where I thought it was just bad. This one is more boring than bad. Number 15 would go to You Slipped a Disc. Kind of like the last episode, this episode is boring like that one, and pretty forgettable. All that really happens is that the pups try to get a disc from Scorch, Corella's pet, a disc, I guess, that has a game on it that Corella, that Roger has been working on, and Corella wants it, Roger denies it. So Scorch steals it and, well, tries to give it to Corella. Yeah. Boring. However, I really did like the ending where Roger is telling Lucky what Corella DeVille would be doing, and believe it or not, she is doing exactly what Roger is saying, like marching up the stairs, driving to the house. But she does indeed, I guess, like the game, and she made some improvements to it, I guess. Very odd episode. Number 14 would go to Chow About That. Such a pointless episode. All that happens is that, they miss lunch. So for 10 minutes, we have to see them all go and try to get lunch. But how do they get lunch, you may ask? Well, trying to get the food from the food tower, where the food comes from. Of course, though, every time they try to get into the food tower, whatever, they always end up failing, and their plan just goes miserably wrong. And also, Mayor Pig and Dumpling are kind of annoying in this episode. They did not really need to be in this episode, to be honest. Number 13 would go to It's a Swamp Thing. This episode almost kind of reminds me of Easy on the Lies from season 1, but it also reminds me of Two for the Show. Both episodes from season 1 that actually are probably a little bit below average, and some that aren't really my favorite from season 1. This episode has Swamp Rat and Steven the Crocodile, two of the most boring characters in the whole show, and honestly, just kind of another pointless episode, and it still is kind of boring. Number 12 would go to The Fungus Among Us. The episodes are starting to get pretty good, starting with this one. So in this special episode, this 20-minute long episode that I call special, this fungus that turns out just to be mushrooms gets caught in Scorch's fur. Well, the smell does. So, of course, Corella wants it, and along the way, a whole bunch of silly things happen. It's pretty much a Pups versus Jasper and Horace episode. I love the episodes with the Pups versus Jasper and Horace. They make for some of the funniest episodes throughout the whole series, in my opinion. And I also really like the ending of this episode, too. It was very funny that the mushrooms just randomly don't smell good at random times. It's a silly episode. Not quite top 10, though. Number 11 would go to Purred Through the Grapevine. This episode almost feels like a mashup of some of my least favorite characters in the show, like Steven the Crocodile, that Swamp Rat, Green Pug, and, if I'm not mistaken, Mooch might be in this one too. I mean, besides that, this episode is pretty good, though, I guess. Number 10 would go to Lucky to Be Alone. So, in this episode, Lucky is tired of being, I guess, the, not being able to do a bunch of things because he already has 100... Not 100, he has like 98 other brothers and sisters who just always want to do the same thing Lucky's doing and always mess up what he wants to do. Lucky wants to do something, I guess, by himself without any brothers or sisters. So what does he do, you may ask? Well, he goes to his aunt and uncle's house, who happens to be very proper. Lucky really likes this. Well, at first. He likes it at first, till the second day he's at his aunt and uncle's house, and, well, he just doesn't really like, I guess, being proper, and he also does really miss his family, and, I mean, he really wishes he could be back at home. At the end of the episode, he does get his wish, and they all come back to get him. This episode is pretty sweet, and it is top 10. Number 9 would go to Goose Pimples. This, I guess, is supposed to be the scary episode of the season. Yeah, sure, Green Pug is beyond annoying in this episode, but he does get what he deserves at the end. Just a goofy and silly episode. Number 8 would go to Market Mayhem. You know what? This episode does kind of remind me of Chow About That, where I guess they run out of food to feed for the dogs. However, unlike Chow About That, we actually get an interesting story where Corella just wants to buy the market from these two, I guess, older people who run the market, who constantly tell her, no, we are not giving up the market. Just a pretty silly, goofy episode. Number 7 would go to Roll Out the Pork Barrel. So, Rolly is tired of, I guess, being different, aka being fat, and, well, like I said, he doesn't like it that much. And surprisingly, the Mayor Pig is going kind of through the same thing with his daughter Dumpling, who just doesn't want to do what he says. So what happens is that Rolly and Mayor Pig end up teaming up, and I mean, it makes for a pretty interesting story. And this is how you make an episode with Mayor Pig not being annoying or just mean for just being a grumpy old guy. Mayor Pig is actually pretty likable in this episode, and I mean, normally he isn't likable, but this one, they did a good job with it. Number 6 would go to Our Own Diggs. Almost kind of like Lucky to Be Alone, except with all the pups now instead of just Lucky. Rolly, Cadpig, and Lucky are tired of being with a bunch of brothers and sisters. Same thing as I said with the other one, Lucky to Be Alone. So, what do they do, you may ask? Well, what they do is that they go around and they try to find a different place that I guess they can just hang out and call their secret hideout hut, I guess, they end up finding a hay bale stack, hay thing, whatever. And they go inside and they realize it's the perfect place for their new hideout. For some reason, though, Green Pug, I guess, takes over their hideout, which really, really, really bothered me. But at least he almost got what was coming for him when Corella decided, hey, I'm going to use hay for a new clothing. But, I don't know, I wish the pups weren't so nice. They should have just left Green Pug in there so then he could be turned into some green clothing. Maybe. I don't know what he would turn into. And overall, though, it's a pretty good episode. Number 5 would go to Two Faces of Anita. If you want me to describe this episode in one word, I would say silly. Out of the two specials that I guess are in part 1 of season 2, this one is definitely the better one out of the two. So, Corella gets jealous because Anita gets recognized, and, well, she gets jealous, so she turns herself into Anita. Honestly, though, that was kind of funny. She does eventually fail, though, at the end, around the end of the episode, and honestly, this episode kind of reminded me of Dogs of Deville, and it's about as good as it as well. Number 4 would go to Cadpig Behind Bars. So, in this episode, Cadpig goes to jail. Well, actually, it's the pound, it's not jail. The episode is silly, and Green Pug actually is not annoying in this episode, and he actually helps out the pups like what he's supposed to do, not act like a jerk towards them. And, well, overall, it's a pretty good episode. Definitely one of my favorites from the, I guess, part 1 of season 2. Number 3 would go to Shake, Rattle, and Wolf. I love this episode. It's silly. It's funny. It's awesome. It's just, the whole episode is just silly through in and throughout. So, what goes on in this episode, you may ask? Well, the pups perform on a stage in front of people, and Corella DeVille wants to, I guess, be their actor. Yeah, actor. I meant director and all that stuff. But obviously, the reason why, because money, as it always is. And like I said, it's a silly episode through in and throughout. Number 2 would go to Leisure Lawsuit. I love this episode with, I guess, the center of attention going on Corella DeVille because, hey, she has she has an injury. Or at least that's what the Dearlys think, until she says that she has actually faked her injury. Obviously, she didn't tell them that. She has her little, I guess, memo recorder, whatever you want to call it. She just randomly talks on that, and Roger and Anita end up finding out, and that's when they punish her, and they make her do something, which I'll talk about here in a minute. Kind of like Fungus Among Us, the center of attention is on Corella, and like I said, both episodes are really good, with this one probably being a bit better. Oh, yeah, and by a bit, I mean, like, a lot better. Anyway, so, Corella is very silly in the show, like, way sillier than the actual movies. So because of that, it's really, I love it whenever she's on the screen, because she always makes me laugh. I love the whole episode, beginning to end. It's silly, 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 and yeah. What else need I say about this episode? It's very good, and as I said, I love the ending too, with Corella now having to give them the food and everything. Good episode for sure. Number 1, and my personal favorite episode of this part 1 of season 2 would go to Lucky All-Star. As I mentioned in season 1, one of my favorite characters in the whole show, would have to go to Tripod. And in this episode, Lucky All-Star, he is actually the center of attention, the main focus, which, honestly, I think this is the only episode in the whole show that is just focused around Tripod. He's really cute, and I love, he's just really cute. I love episodes with him in it, and even though Lucky and Tripod normally don't get along, at all, at least in this episode, well, towards the end, they really do start getting along, and they actually help each other out to try to get out of a situation that, well, they sort of got in. And, well, as I said before, even though Tripod does only have 3 legs, he does try his best to fit in with all the other dogs who have all 4 legs, but there obviously is only a few things that a dog with 3 legs can do. The ending was really sweet, too. Like I said, normally Lucky and Tripod don't get along, but this episode they got along perfectly, and the ending was really sweet, and heck, they ended up winning at the end, too, thanks to Lucky helping Tripod out, and them just helping each other out. I can say that this is by far my favorite episode from the first part of Season 2. And I hope you enjoyed this list. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. If I forgot any, let me know. And I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.